All right, let's now get some analysis on this and bring in Professor Sampson Mamphweli. He is the head of Energy Secretariat at the South African National Energy Development Institute. A very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining us and a warm welcome to SA Today.
Good afternoon to you and the viewers.
Now, Mufamadi says that he did not brief the president on the discussions that took place in the meeting with Director. Let's now make sense of what that means, given the allegations that were made by the former CEO.
One would have expected that he should have briefed the president if he got that kind of sensitive information, because the president is basically the CEO of the country who needs to have sight of all that particular information. All information that has got to do with state security, intelligence, as well as anything that happens in what we call national key points, should be brought to the attention of the president. So I'm finding it a little bit strange that he did not brief the president if he came across that particular information as per his testimony today.
And as we've seen, the transfer, of all powers of new electricity generation to the electricity minister, what kinds of decisions and shift are we likely to see following this transfer?
So, just to put it in context, the president is implementing what he calls the Energy Action Plan that he has announced in July sometime last year. Where he, after that announcement, he then told the nation that he was going to appoint a Minister of Electricity responsible for implementation of the Energy Action Plan. And to some of us, it became very clear that the president wanted someone who will basically coordinate the work that the Energy Crisis Committee is doing and the work that's being done at Eskom in terms of solving some of the problems with some of the power stations that are giving problems. When I looked at the statement from the presidency, it's basically the continuation of the implementation of the Energy Action Plan. He has now transferred part of the powers from the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy. And that can be linked to the work that the Energy Crisis Committee is doing, because the Minister of Electricity will be responsible for the work that the Energy Crisis Committee is doing. And part of the Energy Crisis Committee, there's a work stream that's dealing with new generation capacity, basically looking at how much of new generation capacity do we need, from what sources, and part of it has got to do with the revision of the integrated resource plan. And flowing from that, the Minister of Electricity can then advise or make recommendations after going through what we call the ministerial determinations and getting concurrence from NERSA, because there must be that concurrence from NERSA. And then he can then pass over the information back to the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy for implementation. So in my view, this is the Minister of Electricity's powers ends at recommending the implementation of new generation capacity to the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy. On other aspects that have got to do with working with Eskom, the Eskom board and the Eskom management, it's mainly to track the implementation of the Energy Action Plan, to look at what Eskom was supposed to be doing and whether they are doing that. If there are remedial actions that need to be brought to the table, then he can then make recommendations to Eskom and the Eskom board. But for him to be able to do that, even to interact with the board, he needs the concurrence, or he needs Minister Gordhan, who is the shareholders representative, to cede some of those powers to him, or at least to appoint him as a shareholders representative, or to allow him somehow to be able to interact at least at board level. And when it comes to management level, there isn't much that the minister can do, because ministers are not allowed to work with the management in terms of the Companies Act.
Now, Professor, the former Eskom Chief Executive Officer said that the current capacity constraint had been long coming, as the country had known about the possibility of load shedding since way back in 1998, when the Energy White Paper had specifically recorded that Eskom was asking for new capacity to be added on an urgent basis. Should we rather not look into this, considering that government at that time disagreed with us, stating that it had other priorities and that the available money needed to be allocated to other needs?
So that's true. The white paper identified the shortage of electricity. Government did not necessarily disagree. Government started with a new build program to respond to that kind of a situation. And the new build program involved Medupi and Kusile. There were other challenges associated with Medupi and Kusile. We know that it took about 13 years to complete those projects, at least to get them to commercial operation, not necessarily to be completed, because when they were completed, they had other challenges like design flaws that Eskom has been grappling with, and other challenges associated with those. And those two projects were meant to bring in close to 10,000 megawatts. So that's quite substantial. And over and above that, in 2010, government published the Integrated Resource Plan 2010, which they started implementing around 2011, 2012. By 2013, they had started with a program, which is called the REAP program, the Renewable Energy Independent Power Producer Program, that is done through ministerial determination. There was some policy uncertainty around 2015 when the 27 projects were not signed by Eskom because of the political challenges that we had at that particular point in time. And that took us back in terms of implementation of the IRP, which was then revised in 2019. And after the revision in 2019 with the new Minister Mantashe, he started kind of playing catch up in terms of implementation of bringing in new generation capacity, which he has been doing very well in my view. The challenge has been that the fact that alongside all these efforts, there was a kind of a problem in terms of the maintenance of the coal fleet, which is where the biggest problem is. If you look at the IRP 2010 and the IRP 2019, the assumption then was that for us to have adequacy, which basically means that for us to have adequate supply of electricity, the energy availability factor of the coal fleet needs to be above 70%. And that is what the Minister of Public Enterprises gave to Eskom boards as part of the shareholders compact. And they've been grappling with that. They've been struggling with that. The energy availability factor has been collapsing since 2010, and that is because of the makeshift maintenance and lack of maintenance that was not done with these power stations. So the biggest problem that we have is on the breakdown side, and the fact that we had a bit of a delay in terms of the implementation of the integrated resource plan to bring in new generation capacity.
But Professor, do you agree that the government should be blamed for having turned a blind eye on the precarious, conditions of some of the power plants? Because after the government pronouncement or position on this particular matter, saying that they'd rather allocate resources to other priorities, Eskom had no choice but, to create virtual capacity that will sort of, delay or deferring maintenance and postponing midlife refurbishment for some of these power plants.
So the problem was not necessarily on a government, because I've alluded to the various programs that government put in place. The problem may have been on issues that then crippled into those plans. If you look at the construction of Medupi and Kusile, you look at the report from Justice Zondo about the corruption that took place there, and some malfeasance and things like that. You would appreciate the fact that has got nothing to do with government, but individuals who basically saw an opportunity to loot Eskom resources and public resources. If those projects were properly managed, we could be sitting with additional 10,000, close to 10,000 megawatts of new generation capacity that would have provided us with the much needed base load. In terms of the maintenance of the power plants, that was mainly on the side of Eskom, in terms of neglecting some of the maintenance of some of the coal fleet. The maintenance budget has always been there, by the way. It was the work to be done that was not properly done in some cases, and it goes back to the issue of corruption and state capture that we came from.
Professor Mamphweli, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us this afternoon. I do appreciate your time.